Hey friends. So if you've been watching my posts, you're aware I'm kind of on a narrative kick right now. By narrative kick, I mean I'm knee deep in a book about human meaning making through narrative and all the various ways that this manifests in our lives, in our culture, in the online universe, in the political sphere. And there was there's a nugget that came out yesterday. They're into a chapter now where what they're talking about is the use of narrative to essentially manipulate people, and it's a sophisticated. There's a lot going on in the way that this information is being presented. Because there's the whole way that the online platforms, which are at this point, I would say the vast majority of our information consumption happens digitally. I still get print magazines and I still read them, but I don't read many of them, and I certainly couldn't say that I receive the bulk of my information from printed pages. I ingest far more information per day via a screen of some kind, and frequently via a platform, not just like my email, but an entire something like YouTube or Facebook, social media, streaming services, So the way that, so in other words, those are our narrative distribution mechanisms. That's where we're getting our stories. That's where we're telling our stories. That's where we're getting our stories. And I don't just simply mean stories for entertainment. I mean all of the narratives that inform our identity, all of the ways in which we filter and seek out stories that give us a sense of identity, a sense of belonging, a sense of purpose, a sense of transcendence, growth, relationships. It's all happening online. It's all happening through platforms which are not passive, right? A social media platform is not a passive entity. It is designed to give us, it's basically designed to optimize us as consumers of information for the purpose of selling advertisement. Because the more a platform can keep us glued to it, like right now, if you're watching me, you're watching YouTube. Thanks, YouTube. The more a platform can keep us glued to it, the more money it makes. Plain and simple. It's an attention-seeking game. That's the business model. The more people who are using a platform, the more people are going to see the advertisements that are posted there, and the more they can charge for the advertisements for ad space. Very simple. It's not a terribly sophisticated pitch on the surface of things, but what's going on under the hood is, so I couldn't possibly wrap my head around it. But all that is to say, the way in which, for example, narratives influence our political life is very often via commercial platforms that are whose agenda has nothing to do with laying out the facts of of a situation or of circumstances in the world. The agenda of the platform is to keep our attention on it. So we are consuming and we're interpreting the world through lenses that are not even designed to help us see clearly. We are seeing the world through lenses because that's what a platform is. That's really not there. It was primary. I'm not saying that you can't get good information off the internet. Obviously, you can, or deeply, profoundly transformative information. I found Sadhguru on the internet. I've found all kinds of beautiful, wonderful, transcendent, not just information, but perspectives on the internet. It's all there. But we have to know a little bit about the platform and a little bit about what those lenses are actually, why we are seeing what we are seeing through those lenses. If you can't, that's like fundamental sort of being human information gathering in the year 2022 101 is understanding how those platforms work. And I think there's growing awareness of that. And I think that that's something that most likely younger generations will have. They'll just kind of be like, oh yeah, that's just the way it works. There's a kind of, when, especially once you get out of the phase where those platforms kind of define our identity, we can start to see through to the root of what's really of what that platform's really doing. Why is it so compelling? Why are all our stories coming through these lenses? But getting back to the book, there's a really powerful insight that came through. There's just a formulation of how stories can be used in different ways, because this is a couple of German authors. They're drawing on German history, but they're also drawing on very contemporary examples, and they're talking a lot about the social media, internet age way that stories are being distributed, and they talk about fascism, right? Which Germany obviously has. They can look in there if they're looking for examples in their own history. They've got some examples that they can dig up and really kind of examine for how that works. And one of the things that they said that blew my mind, they're talking about how in virtually all narrative meaning making, we cast ourselves in the role of the hero. In our life, we generally construe our life to be a hero's journey, which is why when we consume entertainment, we resonate with those stories. And as Joseph Campbell has exhaustively demonstrated, stories about the hero's journey and the kind of like the way that there's a very specific template for the kinds of trials and tribulations, the sort of narrative arc of a hero's journey that is visible in stories across millennia and from every possible corner of the globe, totally independently. There's an almost like an archetypal narrative arc of the hero's journey. And the hero's journey generally involves trials, and they're after something. The hero, there's an inciting incident, and the hero's on the quest, and then the hero gets to a place in the story where it's generally like called the all is lost moment. It's the moment in which it appears that the hero has failed. All seems lost, and the hero, but rather than give up in defeat, the hero understands, or they go through a transformation. They change. Something in them changes. They transcend, they transform, and that allows them to then overcome that obstacle and push through and emerge victorious. Classic hero's journey, every Hollywood movie you've ever seen, it's a formula. Fascism tells a hero's journey story, but without the transformation part. So in other words, fascism is a narrative. Fascist narratives don't tell us that we need to transform. They tell us we are already as we need to. We are already chosen. We are already the way everything about us is right. What's wrong is the world or certain antagonists onto which the sort of blame for all of the injustice and for our own kind of problems may be projected, and there's no urgency, there's no imperative that the hero actually undergo a transformation. Well, all we need to do is defeat the enemy. All we need to do is galvanize and defeat the bad people, the bad group, the bad, however defined. That's the only imperative that a fascist narrative tells us, and therefore it can be a very comforting narrative, because there's nothing wrong with me. I don't have to change. All the problems I have, that's not because anything's wrong with me. All the problems I have are because there's some bad people, groups, whatever out there that are responsible for it. All we need to do is get rid of them. Now, and then there was this kind of beautiful phrase where they talk about narrative homelessness. The idea being that if we don't have a narrative that gives us deep meaning, if we don't have a narrative, if we don't have a hero's journey, or at least we feel like we don't have one, we haven't, our identity can't hook into a hero's journey that feels compelling. These narratives, these manipulative and very consciously constructed narratives that are fascist, that are telling us the problem isn't with you. There's nothing wrong with you. You just need to get on the right side and start fighting against these bad people out there. That gives comfort. Now I'm not floundering around for a narrative anymore. Now I've got a home. I've got a place, I've got a group, I have my okayness. I am the hero in this story. I can convincingly insert myself in a story in a way that allows me to be the hero. And I don't need to transform. But it's like neutering the hero's journey, because in any compelling narrative, the reason why the story hooks us is because we see the hero undergoing a process of trials and a process of learning and growth and evolution, and then in the pivotal moment of perceived failure, something happens either through grace or through remarkable act of self-transcendence, and we become a new person. So that distinction, but and what they were very consciously calling fascist narratives that don't require a transformation versus classic hero's journey, which is all about the transformation, was really just like a mind-blowing for me. I was like, oh my gosh, what an incredible insight. What an incredibly succinct and astute way, because that gives us a yardstick for evaluating narratives. Now we can kind of put them up next to each other. It's almost like, they're hundreds, thousands probably, of books written on this, on how to, on Hollywood screenplays, what that formula is. We can, if we become aware of those things, you can start to see them in, not just in fictional stories, but in political narratives, in social commentary narratives. Anywhere you look, you're seeing stories. Anytime someone is speaking, they're telling a story. So these, identifying these elements that create the sort of substrate of it's like the vector in which the story is likely to carry us is really helpful. Knowing how to filter for that and to identify those things. So yeah, I can promise you this is not going to be the last post on this because it's blowing my mind, if you can't tell. But thank you for watching. I appreciate you. Have a wonderful day. I'll see you tomorrow.